guys, so y'all know I love John Deere tractors, and especially the older ones. I'm not a huge fan of some of the things that John Deere has done new, but the older tractors, stuff before he had DEF and computers, stuff like that, I love the old John Deere tractors. There's lots of other brands out there that make great tractors, but I am partial to John Deere, but I also like Kubotas, some of the old Fords, Massey Ferguson, stuff like that. They're great tractors. So we have our John Deere 4200, which we've talked about on the channel before, but one of the things that John Deere has done, which every manufacturer has their things that they do wrong, but John Deere has done used some cheaper components for certain things. We've talked about that thermistor issue with this particular series of tractors, but on a couple models of tractors, specifically 4200, 4300, 4400, they have there's a few other models that had some issues, specifically this late 90s, early 2000s era tractors. The gauge pod would go out, and the most common thing would happen is the fuel gauge would go first, and then later on you might have the other real common one was the temperature gauge. So I didn't particularly care that much about the fuel gauge when my fuel gauge went bad. Fuel gauge, it wasn't that big a deal. I open it up, check it periodically, and fill it up and move on. The temperature gauge became a bigger concern to me because I want to know if my tractor, if I'm working it too hard in bad weather and hot weather, and if I'm having it overheat. So we ended up we're going to deal with that issue. When taking down some trees on the property, we had a termite-eaten tree fall on the tractor actually, and broke the cowlings that go around the around the dash panel and everything, the steering column, and so we are going to go ahead and replace those as well. So we've ordered those parts. They're not here today, so I'm not going to be doing that as part of this video. But I did want to show you guys what this dashboard does look like. Now, real quick, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that. It really helps us out. Like the video, share the video with people that you know that do tractors and stuff. The procedure here is going to be similar to a lot of different types of tractors. So even though this is, like I said, a John Deere 4200, this procedure is going to be very similar to other types of tractors. So let's dive in here and take a look at what we got. Now, I apologize. I already had this all taken apart before I decided to do the video on here. I don't know why that's not focusing. So you can see here we have the dashboard. Now there's 4 screws that hold this one in. There's 1, 2, and then 2 on the bottom. Now our cowling had been damaged, so I didn't have to take out the cowling screws since that had already had previous damage. But those screws do actually attach directly into the cowling. Now on the back here we have obviously our clips that connect in the wire harness and everything, and then there are what is it? It's about 6 screws that hold this in, 6 or 8 screws that hold the actual gauge pod in place. And there's 1 here, and then 4 on the top, 1 more on the bottom. Now on the back of the gauge pod there is electrical adjusting components and things like that, and there is these dust covers here. You do need to save these dust covers, so when you pull them off, don't try to damage them. They just pop off real easy. But we do want to save these dust covers because we're going to use these on our new one. So let's dive in here and take this old one out of here. Okay, now we do want to check our hours gauge on here and make sure, because the new one that we put in here, since on the old style it's not kept in a CPU, the hours is actually kept here in this little dash component. And so we want to know what the hours are on the tractor. So I have 1,286.5 hours. And so we want to make sure that we have that information written down or on hand, because it's going to reset our hours counter. And specifically, if we ever go to sell the tractor, we need to be able to let people know what that changed to, because it would, I guess, technically probably fall under odometer fraud if you didn't. But more than that, just trying to do the right thing and let people know how many true hours are on the tractor. It's just not the right thing to do to try to hide that from somebody you're selling the tractor to, one way or the other. But I imagine it would probably be fraud, but I don't know how tractors are covered under that. But anyway, so we'll get these little clips off here. We get this little wiring harness off the back. Things are always kind of a hassle. Now I'm trying not to damage this as I pull it out, because I do want to be careful that in the event that for whatever reason my new one doesn't work, doesn't fit or whatever, that I can actually put this one back in. So we do want to kind of be careful there. So we're going to set these connectors off to the side right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a brush and my vacuum, my shop vac, and I'm going to actually try to clean up a lot of this dirt in here. I want to get all that crap out of there. And let's just start with a nice new component. Okay, so I'm not trying to make this thing sparkly clean. I just want to get 20 years of tractor dirt and grime off of there, and so that's really all we're trying to do here. Okay, let me show you guys what's going on here. When you buy aftermarket components, sometimes they don't quite line up just right as what the factory does. But the problem is that John Deere dealership wants I think it was $500 for a new gauge cluster, but the aftermarket world has a very similar product that works for this that was about $200 or $250, something like that. But this seal here, that gasket there, is about I don't know, maybe a quarter inch thicker than the John Deere one or so. And so what that's requiring is that means that the old screws here, get that to focus, these old screws no longer fit in place, and they're just a touch too short to actually compress that gasket down. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to actually swap those out with a little bit longer screw. Luckily I have some laying around, but if you're doing this at home, you're going to definitely want to check on that. We're going to work this from opposite sides so that seal gets equal compression all the way around. So I'm just putting these in. I'm not actually tightening any of them down. Now we do got to be careful too that we don't over torque these, because it is just a plastic little clip there holding it all in place, and we don't want to break any of those clips, otherwise we're going to deal with moisture getting in the housing and ruining the gauges again, which we obviously don't want. So we want to make sure that they get snug, but not so snug as to break the plastic on here. Take our seal all the way around. Looks like we're pretty good, even, nice seal. There we go. Okay, that's going in well. Got the last couple screws in here. So now on these connectors, I'm going to take just a little bit of dielectric grease, put it on those, and we don't want too much on there. We just want to get a little bit to protect those, make good connections there on everything. There we go. Being very careful not to get any dirt on those electrical components on the back side of this. Push those in until they click. There we go. And now take our plugs, put our little dust cover plugs back on there. And the last thing we're going to do, we'll go ahead and turn our key. Make sure everything works on here. It looks like it does. Yeah, looks like that all fires up just fine. Perfect. Hey guys, I know that wasn't a terribly long video, but I did just want to show y'all how to do that. I've actually got a little bit more work to do. I got to put those cowlings on once they come in. They're 3 or 4 days out shipping still. And then I've got to that thermistor switch. We've actually swapped out the thermistor switch that we've talked about in the past. Previously we had a boat horn button on there, and the boat horn button kept getting gummed up with all the dirt and everything and debris, and so it would get stuck and it would keep holding my thermistor down and hold that solenoid on, which wasn't a huge deal, but you do risk kind of a fire hazard or overheating hazard, and you risk burning up some components on there. So it didn't stop the tractor from functioning, but I didn't want that circuit open all the time. So we've swapped this out. We're actually putting we've put a toggle switch on there, and the toggle switch is an instant on-off toggle switch, and we're going to throw that on there instead, and that should hopefully alleviate this issue. This one actually comes with a dust cover that screws on over the top of it, and so that'll hopefully alleviate that. And with doing that, we're actually going to end up remounting it up here on the console. Since now we have everything apart, we have access to it. It'll look a little bit nicer up here on the console. Other than that, guys, thanks. I really appreciate y'all watching. Like I said, make sure please subscribe to the channel. It does help us out a lot. Like the video, share the video if you know anybody that's got one of these tractors or dealing with a problem like this on a John Deere tractor, and it should hopefully alleviate that. All of our gauges now are working on this new one, and so it shouldn't be a problem anymore. So thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it.